For over half a millennium, one name echoed across the known world, a symbol of absolute power and unparalleled achievement: Rome. The Roman Empire wasn't just a nation. It was the world. It built roads that stitched together continents, fielded legions that humbled kings, and forged a culture that would become the very bedrock of Western civilization. For 500 years it seemed invincible, eternal, but then it fell. A titan of history, a giant that once bestrode the world, crumbled into dust. This is the story of how the greatest empire in history collapsed, not from a single mighty blow, but from 1,000 cuts from within. You've all heard the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, it didn't fall in one either. The decline of Rome was a long, agonizing unraveling that spanned centuries. It was a slow-motion catastrophe, a story of decay that began, as so many do, with immense wealth and absolute power and the poison of corruption that inevitably follows. In its golden age, as Rome's borders swelled with new conquests, a different kind of rot began to fester in its heart. The leaders, once stoic and disciplined, grew insatiably greedy. The Senate, once a council of revered statesmen, became a marketplace where influence was bought and sold. Emperors, who were supposed to be the first citizens of the Republic, built sprawling palaces and lived in decadent luxury, utterly detached from the struggles of the common people. The gap between the fabulously rich and the desperately poor widened into an unbridgeable chasm. While aristocrats feasted, the plebeians, the backbone of the city, were placated with bread and circuses, free grain and bloody spectacles to distract them from their growing misery. The core values that had made Rome great: duty, honor, and service to the state were replaced by a relentless pursuit of personal gain. While this internal decay was eating away at the empire's foundations, external threats were gathering like storm clouds on the horizon. The world beyond Rome's borders was not empty. Fierce Germanic tribes like the Goths and the Vandals pressed against the Rhine and Danube frontiers. To the east, the powerful Persian Empire was a constant rival, always ready to challenge Roman dominance. And from the vast steppes of Asia, a new and terrifying force was emerging: the Huns, whose very name struck fear into the hearts of all who heard it. These weren't just scattered bands of raiders. They were organized, determined, and waiting for any sign of weakness, ready to strike and claim a piece of the crumbling giant. But here is the crucial truth. Rome, its most formidable enemy, wasn't lurking outside its walls. It was already inside, sitting on the throne and walking the halls of the Senate. The political stability that had once been Rome's greatest strength evaporated into chaos. The position of emperor became the most dangerous job in the world. A cycle of assassination and usurpation became the new normal. Emperors were murdered by their own guards, replaced by ambitious generals, who were then, in turn, murdered themselves. In one particularly brutal 50-year period, known as the crisis of the 3rd century, Rome churned through more than 20 emperors. Think about that: an average reign of less than 3 years, most of which ended violently. How can an empire function, let alone defend itself, when its leadership is a revolving door of bloodshed and betrayal? This political turmoil had a devastating effect on the one institution that held the empire together: the army. The legendary Roman legions, once the most disciplined and loyal fighting force on the planet, became fractured and unreliable. Soldiers' allegiance was no longer to the abstract idea of Rome, but to the general who promised them the most gold. Legions started fighting each other in brutal civil wars, battling for their chosen commander to become the next emperor. The army that was supposed to protect Rome from its enemies was now tearing it apart. Discipline vanished. Loyalty became a commodity. The once mighty shield of the empire was broken. With the political and military structures in shambles, the economy was next to collapse. Decades of civil war and extravagant spending had drained the imperial treasury. To pay the soldiers and fund their lavish lifestyles, emperors resorted to a disastrous policy. They debased the currency. They minted coins with less and less silver and gold, mixing them with cheaper metals. The result? Runaway inflation. A Roman denarius that could once buy a family's dinner became practically worthless. The empire's intricate trade network, which brought goods from Britain to Egypt, ground to a halt. Commerce withered, businesses failed, people began to starve in the cities. To make matters worse, a series of devastating plagues swept through the population, killing millions and crippling the workforce. Even the institution of slavery, which had been the engine of Roman labor for centuries, began to falter as conquests dried up and the supply of new slaves dwindled. The economic heart of the empire was failing. Faced with this overwhelming crisis, the Emperor Diocletian made a fateful decision in the late 3rd century. He concluded that the empire was simply too large and too broken to be governed by one man. So he split it in two: the Western Roman Empire with its capital still in Italy and the Eastern Roman Empire, which would later become known as the Byzantine Empire with its capital at the newly founded city of Constantinople. For a time, this seemed to stabilize things. But it was a temporary fix. The two halves began to drift apart, developing their own cultures, economies, and political priorities. The East, which was wealthier and more urbanized, managed to survive and even thrive. The West, however, continued its slow, painful decline. The final act came in the 5th century. Wave after wave of barbarian migrations, pushed by the Huns, crashed against the Western Empire's weakened frontiers. The Romans, desperate for manpower, even began hiring barbarian tribes as mercenaries to defend their own borders, a strategy that would spectacularly backfire. Finally, in the year 476 AD, the moment came. A Germanic chieftain named Odoacer, leading a revolt of barbarian soldiers in the Roman army, marched on the capital. He deposed the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, a tragic echo of Rome's legendary founder, Romulus. Odoacer didn't even bother to name a successor. He simply sent the imperial insignia to the emperor in Constantinople, signaling that the Western Roman Empire was no more. It was over. After 1,000 years of history, the light of Rome in the West had been extinguished. But the story of Rome doesn't truly end there. The fall of the Western Roman Empire wasn't just an end. It was a profound transformation. An old world collapsed, but from its ruins, a new one was born. Rome's legacy is so deeply embedded in our world that we often don't even see it. Its language, Latin, evolved into the Romance languages we know today: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. Its legal principles, concepts like innocent until proven guilty, and the importance of written law, became the foundation for modern legal systems across the globe. Its incredible architecture, the arches, the domes, the aqueducts inspired builders for centuries and still stands as a testament to their genius. The ashes of the empire became the fertile soil for the growth of medieval Europe and the kingdoms that would one day become modern nations. The fall of Rome is more than just a history lesson. It's a timeless cautionary tale. It teaches us that no matter how powerful, how wealthy, or how advanced the civilization may seem, it is not invincible. When it loses its core values, when its people become divided, when its leaders forget their purpose, and when corruption replaces integrity, even the greatest empire in history can fall. It serves as a powerful reminder for us all that the foundations of any great society are not built of stone and steel, but of unity, purpose, and shared values. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into history fascinating, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the past. We'll see you in the next video.